Welcome back to the channel. If you had a chance to watch my overall tour, you may have had a chance to see the motorized bed that I've installed and built that allows this bed to convert into an elevated couch and allows for more space in the trailer. If you haven't, then welcome. You're getting a chance to see what we've come up with. First thing I want to do is just kind of introduce you to where this is. If you haven't seen the whole trailer, go back and watch the full video that's listed on my channel. And if you have, this is, I believe, a 6-inch mattress. I bought it on Amazon. I did a fair amount of research on mattresses. A lot of the mattresses on Amazon have fiberglass in them. And you have to be really careful with those because if you happen to open the cover when you're washing or something, you get fiberglass fibers throughout your trailer that you just can't ever get out. So I did a bunch of research, and the one I got is not supposed to have any fiberglass in it. So, and that was from an independent website that I found. I'll put a link to it in the description as well. It's super comfortable. It is a memory foam, you know, where they have a combination of memory foam and medium or high density foam that makes it's really comfortable on the platform. It's an RV short queen, so there's a little bit of space on either side, which is kind of nice because we can set things over here when we're sleeping, like Kindle or anything, and then we still have our platform here when the bed's down for setting drinks and things like that. The way this works is the mattress is held in on the front here with this piece of hickory. Actually, before I get to that, let's go ahead and move it. So the way this works is there's a linear actuator underneath. I'm going to show you from the other side. And underneath I have a switch. And all I have to do is flip this switch. I should make sure it's pulled forward all the way. So while that's moving, and it's not super fast, but the nice thing is I can flip the switch and it just keeps going. So you'll hear that motor working. It sounds like it's working pretty hard. The linear actuator I got is supposed to have metal gears. So I assume it's going to hold up, but the good news is it's only like $54 was the actuator that I purchased. And again, I'll show you that underneath when we get around to it. So you'll notice that the bed is just lifting, 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 lifting. And once it's all the way up, I'll be able to push this back. It takes, I don't know, about a minute. And we can start pushing it back now. And I'll show you a few things. So you'll notice that it's running on 80/20 track right here. It just has their little bearing pads between the frame and this track. The frame is made by 3 by 1.5 inch 80/20 T-slot. I'm going to go ahead and take this cover off because I put this on. You'll notice that I recessed some little holes to hold it in, but I never finished this edge with a bevel and finished it with the same stain that I used for everything else, or the same sealer. So we're going to have to go ahead and take it off, and then you can see it a little bit better. Just going to set this here for a minute. You'll notice that I haven't trimmed out this area yet. That's the next step as well. I'm going to get another piece of hickory so that I can make it match. And you'll notice there's a very slight little overhang. It's actually not all the way back, but with that piece on, there's a very slight little bit of overhang, so the trim will match up perfectly when it's done. So you can see here, this is 3-inch by 1.5 inch 80/20 frame. It has basically zero sag on it. My whole family can be up here and it doesn't move. In fact, I sometimes wonder if I may have overbuilt this a little bit because it does have a little bit of weight to it. The mattress is just put on with 1/4 inch plywood. That is, I actually just used VHB tape to glue it down. I may go back and add a few screws. In a couple of places, that tape will pop a little bit. You'll hear it moving when we're on it. So if you didn't watch the other video, the nice thing about this is it opens up the space a lot. If we need to prepare food, we have the counter space here. We have this extra space here to set things, even if we're preparing food. Though, again, I normally try to cook outside just because we enjoy it more. And then the nice thing is, we don't need these pillows. Oh, whoops. We have a little elevated reading spot to read if we're inside when the weather's not great or we're just relaxing in the evening. Now this trim piece is important because it helps hold this mattress in place. If I had folded this up without that there, this mattress would have just started sliding forward. and would have just stuck out here. And there's another important thing that we did. Let me go ahead and move this camera forward, and I'm going to uncover this a little bit. You're going to notice there's a little strap right here. And what I did to help keep the bend in the right place when this folds up, and so that the top doesn't slide up to the ceiling, because the mattress always wants to flatten out, is I took this strap. It's like a cheap strap from Home Depot or maybe even Harbor Freight. I cut it down to length, and then just screwed it into the frame underneath. And you know, at first I was a little worried that might be uncomfortable, but you know, we sleep this way, and with that there running in the same direction, and the way it lays flat, and it's not super tight, it's just enough to hold it back, we never notice it at all. And every once in a while I'll find it, be like, oh yeah, I forgot that was there. So those are the two things that kind of make sure this thing will work without the mattress causing problems. Let me put this back a little bit. Not that it really matters, because I've kind of undone everything else. So I think that covers the inside portion of this. And now we're going to go ahead and go around to the back, and I'm going to try to show you how I structured the linear actuator and how that works. So let's go on out back. All right, so the wind's picking up and it's starting to rain a little bit right when I came out here. So hopefully I can get this all in before the weather gets too bad. What you're seeing back here is the back side of the frame. So there's that plywood we saw. This is 3.5, or the 3 by 1.5 inch aluminum 80/20, and we have 1.5 inch struts that provide the support throughout. And of course there's two halves. These are equal size. This is one half, and then there's the bottom half. Right now it's up, so you're only seeing one from this angle. So that's the structure. The nice thing about having the 80/20 is I have attachment points infinitely everywhere. Next, let's talk about the linear actuator. This is what makes the thing move. All right. A linear actuator, if you're not familiar with it, has a motor, and then there's a set of gears through here that transfer the spinning of the motor this direction into an elongation of this extension arm here. This particular linear actuator is made by EcoWorthy. They sell them on Amazon, or I think through their website. It's a 10-inch model. At its shortest, it's just over 15 inches, and when it's fully extended, it's 25 inches. When it gets fully extended and pushed back, I don't know if you can see it in the frame right now, but the bed frame just rests against the back frame of the trailer, so that provides the support to keep it from tipping. And so this thing isn't actually supporting anything, it just needs to move it. This linear actuator has a 1,000 Newton push strength, which I think works out to around 250 pounds. They do have a few that have a little bit higher push strength that might be of consideration. It always sounds like it's working pretty hard, but like I said, it's supposed to have metal gears, and I don't think I've pushed that limit, and it, you know, certainly not getting used a lot. It's used every once in a while. I will tell you that it took me about 25, maybe 30 tries to figure out the positioning of this. I just kept trying things and it wouldn't work, and different ways of orienting it. I built brackets that broke, and I'm going to show you the bracket a little more closely here in a minute. It was an interesting project. So I can tell. I'll go ahead and show you the dimensions of where mine is, where the anchor points are. But if you have anything different, then you may end up finding that this is not necessarily the right exact setup for you, and you're going to have to play with it. But it'll hopefully get you closer, and you don't have to keep trying as many things as I did. I'm not an engineer. If I was an engineer, at one point I thought of becoming an engineer, but I'm not one. And maybe if I was, I could have figured this out from the beginning with some CAD software and some calculations, but I just used trial and error. One thing to note that is really important is that I had to work out the position of the lower bracket, but having one bracket that could be easily repositioned was significant in this process, because once I figured this out, then I could fine-tune the exact position so that it both laid flat and was up at the right position when fully extended by making small adjustments here. So that was critical. I'd even consider making this out of something other than 80/20 once I had the dimensions, just having maybe a metal shop make it. But I need to have something that was adjustable for this top portion. So just something to keep in mind. All right, once I have that, let's go ahead and look at the bracket. Before you start typing to question why I didn't build this out of 80/20, the simple answer is that when I bought the frame material, I hadn't figured out what I was going to do to make it move. And to build the bracket, 80/20 would be perfect for it. You really should use a 90-degree support piece that is something you order specifically with recessed holes drilled in, and they're not particularly expensive, but if you've ever worked with 80/20, the shipping's expensive, and I wasn't 100% sure when I started that it was even going to work, so I built some brackets, and then I just kept going down that route until I figured it out. And then I had the way of building a bracket worked out, and rather than spend the money on the parts plus the shipping to order one, I just decided to build it out of wood, and it's super strong and working great. So if I was to do this again, I would just design this bracket in 80/20 and have it shipped with the correct little 90-degree support bracket. So that's why it's out of wood. So you have a direct view now of the 2x4 bracket that I built that anchors this linear actuator to the underside of the bottom half of the couch when it's in the couch position. You'll notice that it has a triangular portion here that is obviously going to provide a great deal of flexural strength, and there's a hole that goes through right here so that I can anchor it inside that triangle to the bottom of this main bracket. And then it's centered right over one of the support struts that I showed you on the other. Actually, I added one. I added one more 80/20 support strut that sits flat, whereas the other ones are up against the underside surface of the bed. So I added one here so that I could screw it in back here so that it has a great deal of stability this way. When it's pushing down, this is holding it in. When it's pulling it, the bottom down, it's not gonna flip this back. So to make it work, obviously I had to figure out where to anchor it here and then drill a hole so I had the bracket far enough this way so that it could lift without the linear actuator hitting the underside of the lifted portion. I'm sure someone out there knows all the engineering terms for this, but I don't. So I kind of figured it out. Let me tell you a little bit about where this is. So I can get to the hinge. The hinge is right here, and the anchor point is right here. So let's just draw a line. The anchor point is right about there. That look about right. Yeah. And so from the hinge down is the center of the hinge down is 6 3/4 inches. And if I consider the hinge positioned right, I'm not using a square, but this should be good enough, right there. It is positioned, let me get in here, 5 inches this direction from the hinge. So 6 3/4 inches down and 5 inches out from the hinge. And then you're gonna set this upper sliding bracket so that it can be adjusted. Just as a reminder, this 80/20 bed frame is the exact width of a queen size mattress. So what is that, 60 inches? I'll have to look that up. I think it's 60. And that's exactly, so each one of these is 30 inches long. So again, 6 3/4 down, 5 inches out to the pivot point, and then this thing has a length of 15, just under, I think it's 1475 when it's fully retracted, and it extends out 10 inches from there. So those are the dimensions. You know, if you just use something like this, it it's pretty strong, but you get a lot more strength when you add a shear bracket or shear covering. And so I have one on the inside, and then I had to take this one off so that I could see what I was doing when I was anchoring things in here. This is anchored on with a carriage bolt as well. That's how this is anchored through this area. And this is a lot harder to get, because once you figure it out, I had to build a bracket, multiple brackets, as trial and error until I figured out where to put this, and then make one that I could put a carriage bolt exactly where it needed to be so that it would be in the right position. So I would start with these measurements if you're using the same size system as me in terms of distance, and you get the same linear actuator, because I had to make, I don't know how many, 6 or 7 of these brackets, and because each time I would make small adjustments, and I screwed these things in and pretty much dropped it on my wife's head one time when it didn't hold while this thing was trying to push. So, you know, it took a few trials and errors, and then once I got it, I built one, and I put a carriage bolt through so that and anchored it exactly where it needed to be. And I think that's critical. So start with this measurement. Expect to build more than one of these as you're going through this and trying to figure it out, because there's some trial and error, and you need this thing anchored really well. The shear piece on the inside here, I put on from the beginning, and then I add this one after I get everything. I keep putting it up wrong, but I add this one up here once I get everything in place. Obviously this wire is there. So then add that, and this shear is going to add significantly more strength to this system so that I shouldn't have to worry about this thing flexing or breaking. The weak point is really the bolt going through. And with a 2x4 and a long enough bolt, I countersunk it, but it's still got well over 1 inch of wood in there, and I don't think it's going anywhere. So that's how this works. Again, somebody asked at one point about the switch. When you look at these, you can buy some little switches with remotes. And those will control this, and then you can control it from anywhere, but I'm not sure why you would need to do that. This linear actuator has a limit switch in it, so when it gets all the way closed or all the way open, it stops letting power go to make it keep going. So if you don't have that feature in the linear actuator, it's going to go click, 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 and just keep trying to go, and you'll ruin the linear actuator. So you don't want that. But because it has that feature, I brought a simple switch, and it's got a center position and an up and a down, and depending on how you wire it, it's going to go one way or the other. And so I can just flip the switch and walk away, and when it's done, there's no more power, and it's not going to let any power through until you flip it the other direction. So something to consider. I'll put a link to that switch. It took me hours to figure that switch out, just researching on Amazon and on the internet and how to control these. I think maybe if you're not an electrician or an engineer, they just don't always explain it, and half of them, the descriptions are terrible, so you can't even figure out for sure what they do. So this is the bracket. I've shown you everything. I'm going to go ahead and reposition the camera a little bit, and then have you guys so you can see it close down here. So as I said, I'll be including links to all the products I use, including the mattress and the linear actuator and the switch and everything else in the description. And if you've enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe so that I can continue to provide content on the trailer build and the different things that I've done. Really appreciate you taking the time to watch today, and have a good day.